A lot of you guys say that Rochester is going to be the city that you end up in when you do relocate to the Rochester area. But let me tell you, you're probably wrong. You're probably talking about the Finger Lakes region. And in this video, we're going to be uncovering all the differences and some of the similarities of the Rochester and the Finger Lakes region. I'm going to be comparing the two: cost of living, housing market, what there is to do, lifestyle, all these things, anything in between. We're going to be covering it in this video, and stick around to the end because we're going to be uncovering some pretty important factors for you and your family when it comes to which area you want to actually put your family in when you move here. So stick around for that, and without further ado, guys, let's hop into the video right now. All right, so first we'll talk about cost of living, because most of the time when people are moving here, one of the biggest reasons why they're moving here, most important things that they're looking for is the cost of living. That's why people relocate to this area if it's not just for work. So in Rochester, you're looking at a relatively affordable cost of living. Everything from groceries to healthcare to transportation, everything is relatively affordable. In fact, recent data supports the fact that the Rochester area is anywhere from 3% to 15% lower than the national average in almost every single category as far as cost of living is concerned. Now, where you're going to be looking at the most expensive thing is property taxes. So in Monroe County, $500,000 house, you're probably looking at $15,000 or more for that $500,000 house. Finger Lakes, on the other hand, you're going to be talking similar affordability. Cost of living is going to be just about the same. However, your property taxes are going to be slightly lower. It's going to be on a $500,000 house, you're looking closer to $11,000 or $12,000 in property taxes versus that $15,000 or $16,000. So you could be saving a lot of money just by going to the Finger Lakes region instead of the Rochester region. But either way, no matter which way you go, whether it's Rochester or the Finger Lakes, you're looking at a much lower cost of living as compared to many other major metros. And yes, that the property taxes do make a big difference, especially in affordability for housing and whatnot. But you know, when you're saving a little bit more money on the back end of everything else that you're affording here, you know, you'll be able to pay those property taxes a lot better, and they're escrowed in your mortgage payment and everything. You typically don't see that money. That's not to say that it's not important, because it is. I hate taxes just as much as the next guy, but the area is a lot more affordable than many other major metros. And you know, the one thing that Rochester kind of lacks in is you know, the taxes. I mean, we get heavy winter here, right? So there's going to be plows and there's going to be salt trucks, and typically with the plows, it's going to pick up chunks of the road. You're going to have major potholes and stuff. Sometimes the taxes will go toward the infrastructure and actually fill in those potholes. And it seems like every springtime or so, they go around and they fill in the potholes, and you know, they do make it better. However, there are some years where it's exceptionally bad, and maybe it doesn't see as much rehab on the infrastructure, if you will. And so then you kind of wonder, hey, where's my money going, right? But yeah, overall cost of living, you're going to be looking good on both fronts of Rochester and the Finger Lakes. So if your only factor is cost of living, then you can't go wrong with either place. You know, Finger Lakes will be slightly less expensive overall. But the other thing to factor in too is although cost of living generally is the same, if you live in the Finger Lakes, chances are you're going to be driving longer, so you're going to be spending more in gas. Just how many times you have to refill, because you know, going from place to place is going to take a little bit longer. It's going to be a further drive. You're talking a few miles rather than, you know, a couple minutes, like 1 mile in through the city. So those kind of things matter, but overall cost of living is about the same. That being said, I did just want to touch on the cost of living. I touched on the property taxes. one thing that's important is the property values, right? And so a lot of people move here. It's highly sought after that we do have lower home prices. So you can get a very nice house for $300,000. You can get a very nice move-in ready house at $150,000 or $175,000. That's very possible. At that lower price point, you might have to put in a little bit of cosmetic touch-ups, like some TLC and some love. But they're going to be very nice homes, 3-bed, 2-bath kind of deal, right? Finger Lake's going to be the same exact thing. The differences in that is that Monroe County is going to have far more competition. So the volume of buyers is a lot higher in Monroe County just by essence of population. Just because there's more people in Monroe County, in the Rochester region, that there's going to be more competition. That being said, typically, although there's less competition in the Finger Lakes, people are usually coming to the Finger Lakes with more money. So there may be, 5 less buyers on any given house, competitive scenario. But those buyers that are offering might be throwing around a little bit more money because they have it. And then especially when you're talking about the lake life, if you're buying a house on the lake, not only are you talking more taxes because you're lakefront, but those people typically have a lot more money to play around with too. So, competition, it's high in Rochester. You're going to get anywhere from 5 to 15 competitors on any given house that you're offering on. Whereas the Finger Lakes, you might get 5 at the most, anywhere from 2 to 5. But in the Finger Lakes, they're throwing around more money, whereas in Rochester, it takes 15 people to reach the same amount of escalation, right? So that's something to kind of factor in. Overall, though, property values are going to be about the same, but you might see escalations go a little bit higher in the Finger Lakes just because people have it. Now that the boring stuff is out of the way, cost of living is very boring, but we always have to touch on it. Let's talk about the lifestyle and the community of Rochester versus the Finger Lakes. It's very different. I think this is the biggest difference between Rochester and the Finger Lakes, is just the lifestyle. I mean, obviously, right? You're talking about a metro area, a city area, versus quiet, quaint, and charming lake life, and everything is like slowed down. So that's where we'll start. Is Rochester is going to be much more fast-paced. Like, everybody's kind of going to be in a hurry as it compares to people in the Finger Lakes. The Finger Lakes is a lot more slowed down. It's almost like a southern lifestyle where people kind of take their time. There's not too much hustle and bustle. There's not too much going on. People are relatively patient, and I would also say that people in the Finger Lakes are a little bit more pleasant to deal with. Anytime you go to any city, so that could be metro like New York City or Chicago or LA, or a small city like maybe like Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester, you're going to be talking about differences in people and just lifestyle. The differences in people, it's just they're faster paced. They're just going. They're just they're trying to get from A to B as quickly as possible, and they're trying to go on their schedule and just be efficient, I suppose. Whereas people in the Finger Lakes region don't necessarily care too much about that. Maybe if they're like a business person for whatever reason, they might be doing that. But a majority of people in the Finger Lakes are going to be taking it easy. They're going to be taking it slower. They're going to be enjoying the views. They're going to be enjoying the scenic overlooks of the lake and all this kind of stuff. They might even be taking walks in the woods during their lunch breaks and whatnot. So the Finger Lakes is a lot more relaxed, a lot slower, a lot more just like, it's charming, and I'd say a lot more of a southern type, island type lifestyle without the sun, right? So although, and that kind of brings up a good point about the lifestyle too, is that both Rochester and the Finger Lakes are outdoorsy. They're very outdoorsy areas. However, the Finger Lakes is going to be different. It's going to be more rolling hills and a lot more rugged type terrain, whereas Rochester is a lot flatter. It's just going to be flatter trails, more wide open trails, maybe like trails over some ponds or something like that, right? But the Finger Lakes region, you have the mountains, and when I say mountains, I mean like they're big rolling hills. They're not mountains, they're just big rolling hills. I'll see if I can put up some footage of it, you'll see. But because the 11 Finger Lakes are glacial lakes, they're carved out of the mountains, and they kind of sit down in the valley, and that creates a really charming aesthetic, but it also creates rougher terrain for anybody who's an outdoor enthusiast. So if you're looking to go hiking, running, biking, whatever, you can get off trail pretty easily, pretty quickly, and you can have a lot of fun doing that. There's a lot more mountain biking and stuff in the Finger Lakes region, as well as just like the boating is different. So, on each lake, you're gonna have like sandbar areas where you can go park your boat out, jump out into the water, and you can stand in the sandbar and hang out. And the other thing that's nice about the sandbars is that in times like this where it's winter out and it's freezing, you can ice fish on the sandbars, because that will be the part of the lake that will freeze over because it's shallow water. So that'll freeze over and you can ice fish. So typically you'll see a lot of people out in their ice fishing tents, and they'll go carve a hole in the ice and do their thing, and they'll be out there for days. I know some people who have been out there for a week or two at a time, and they just called off of work because they had the sick days, and so they go and do that. And whereas in Rochester, you're not going to get that. You have Lake Ontario, which is basically like a small ocean that divides Canada from the United States, and that's not going to freeze over. So people do go fishing out in the winter and stuff, and specifically like bird hunting and whatnot, but like you're not going to get that type of lifestyle there. You do have some good hiking in the Rochester region, but it's not going to be as hilly as the Finger Lakes region. So there's that type of difference in the lifestyle as well. But overall, they're going to be similar. Just Rochester is going to be far more city feel. It's going to have nightlife. It's going to have bars and restaurants and music and things going on like that, where people are walking the streets. The Finger Lakes region, you have some local entertainers, local music, small band type things, right? Like a brewery. But that's exactly it, is you got breweries and you got wineries and you have like farm to table restaurants. So you got really cool, unique stuff that typically they're going to have scenic overlooks at the restaurants, or they're going to be on the lake. And it's going to be like an outdoorsy type feel, where they kind of incorporate it into the restaurant, where they have cornhole and they have horseshoes, and they have all these like outdoor games, ladder ball, and they have all these outdoor games that you can play at these breweries and wineries and these restaurants, because everything is kind of, in the summertime when it's nice weather, everything's kind of cooked into the outdoor, the nature-esque type feel of the area, right? That's kind of the whole part of it, is you have to get outside, you have to be in nature, right? And that's why people love coming here. So you've got those differences as well. So if you're somebody that likes the hustle and bustle, and you like the fast pace, and you like the loud, and you feel lively with that stuff going on, right? If you're coming from another big city, New York City or LA or Miami or whatever, Rochester might be a great fit for you. But if you're not coming from a city, or you're coming from a city and you really don't like that life and you want to kind of settle down and slow down, more of like a southern or a retirement type lifestyle, the Finger Lakes is going to be great for you, because you're going to have a lot more space, a lot more room to really do whatever you want to do, and not really be judged by neighbors, and you can let your dogs out and run, and you can get out and have beautiful views of the lake and the water and the rivers and all that kind of stuff. So it really depends on your specific style. Do you like the hustle and bustle, or do you like quaint, calming, relaxing, charming type scenery? So based on that, like, there are stark differences, and it's important to pay attention to those when you're deciding to relocate here. So which brings me to, if you are looking to relocate here and you have general questions, or you do want to move or whatever, I'd be honored to be the team of choice. We are the #1 relocation team in the Rochester region and the Finger Lakes region. So give us a call there on the information on the screen. We'd love to help you. Now, if you're relocating to the area for work, like you're getting relocated at your job, chances are you're going to be closer to Rochester. The Finger Lakes region is known for, and it's great for professions like agriculture and maybe some small like agricultural manufacturing, but then also like education. So you've got like Ithaca College, you got Cornell, Finger Lakes Community College. You have a bunch of college, Binghamton, Syracuse, a lot of these universities down in the Finger Lakes, but you're not going to have a whole lot else around here. Maybe if you're a professional, like a attorney or something like that, then maybe you can find home in the Finger Lakes. But chances are, if you're working for larger firms and you're being relocated with them, then you're going to be closer to the city. You're going to be closer to Rochester. That doesn't mean you have to live in Rochester. If your work is in Rochester, you can live in Canandaigua, Victor, Farmington, even potentially Geneva. It's going to be a longer haul out there, but you can get a taste of the Finger Lakes with a longer commute. But chances are your job that you're being relocated for is not going to be in the Finger Lakes region. So those are two stark differences in the two areas. Is just that the job market in the Finger Lakes, it kind of sucks. If you work remote, then great. You can get the best of both worlds. But if you're in-person type worker and you work at a larger firm, you're going to be closer to Rochester, and you're not going to be able to find home in the Finger Lakes very well. So that's something that's super important to keep in mind. And that alone might dictate where you look, because, you know, are you really going to drive 45 minutes to an hour to work every single day? Probably not, especially in the wintertime. Probably not. And if you're working in Rochester and you want to live in the Finger Lakes, you're going to be doing that. That's just the nature of the beast. So I've had some people that only have to go into the office, you know, they're hybrid, so they only have to go into the office 1 or 2 days a week. Then hey, that's perfect for them. If they're cool with 1 or 2 days a week driving an hour to work, then cool, live in the Finger Lakes. But if you're an everyday type person going into the office, then you're going to have to be closer to Rochester. Now, you can still be in the suburbs of Rochester. You can be in Pittsford, or even maybe HFL, Honeoye Falls, Lima, or Fairport, or Penfield, or, you know, Irondequoit, Webster, Greece, these areas, right? But yeah, the Finger Lakes you might want to avoid just for commute's sake. If you're working in Rochester, it's just the fact of it. Now, we've talked about lifestyle, we've talked about cost of living, we've talked about the job market and real estate. The one thing I hope you stuck around for is this part right here. And this is not me saying this. This is according to statistics. You can go to the websites, check the websites, Neighborhood Crime or neighborhoodscout.com, niche.com, the Rochester Police Department website. The crime in Rochester is much worse than the Finger Lakes region. Now, the Finger Lakes region has certain areas that are a bit more crime-filled, right? It's typically going to be your more populated areas, places like probably Ithaca. And you can go and look on a crime map of Ithaca and where the crime is happening. But those are going to be typically your more crime-filled areas. But Rochester is going to be far more crime than the Finger Lakes region, and I feel like that's a given. That shouldn't have to be said. It's a bigger metro area. It just happens. And again, this is not me saying it. This is the statistics of it. And a lot of the news headlines is that Rochester is not a very safe place. But in this video, I'm not saying you have to live in Rochester City proper, but a lot of people choose to live close to Rochester. And if you're close to Rochester, you might get some collateral damage. So I would certainly refer you to a lot of these maps that shows you the crime statistics, because, hey, if it's me and I'm bringing my family to a new area, I'm going to be looking at the crime pretty heavily, especially if I have young kiddos and stuff. I'm going to be looking at that. That's going to be an important factor for me. So I'll throw up some links in the description of websites that you can look at that back up this data or back up these claims. But If crime is super important to you, then the Finger Lakes region is going to be the way to go rather than Rochester. But all of that being said, you know, whether you're moving for lifestyle or safety or cost of living or whatever, there are major differences and a lot of similarities to Rochester and the Finger Lakes. So it's going to be based on if you just want a quieter, calmer, relaxing lifestyle versus the exciting, upbeat lifestyle of the city. So that's totally up to you. You need to make that call. But either way, guys, I'm here for you. I have a team here in Rochester that we're helping people just like you every single day relocate to the Rochester region and the Finger Lakes region. So that number and that email, it's popping up on the bottom of your screen. I'm the guy that answers those text, emails, and phone calls. Definitely do not hesitate to reach out. And until the next video, guys, peace. See ya. Bye-bye.